Hello! We're going to watch a screening of the Hallow, and we are very glad to have the director Corin Hardy with us. Please welcome him.
Thanks very much.
You're here with Hallow, which is the first feature film you've directed. Could you tell us a little bit about the movie?
Sure. Yes, The Hallow's the first film I've made. I'm a big fan of horror movies and specifically monster movies, and I wanted to make my first film honour the monster movies, and I tried to think of something new in the monster world that wasn't like vampires or zombies, even though I love them. And I looked into fairy folklore, and I found in fairy mythology there's a lot of dark, interesting ideas. So I tried to make a kind of a fairy tale that's grounded in reality. So it could be scary, and it would be sort of something that you could identify with, but it would become a fairy tale.
Was the actors playing main characters, are them parents themselves?
Thanks for the question. I'm really glad you felt that way. Neither of them are. I was really obviously trying to create a convincing couple that felt real, along with the movie, generally to try and bring a sort of a fairy tale into reality and try and cross those two things. And Joseph Moore's a very kind of intense, committed actor we'd broken the script down in a lot of detail and gone into the sort of psychological side a lot. But strangely, I had a baby 2 weeks before I started shooting the film. So I ended up kind of enacting out my own movie in the background of whilst making it. So maybe that helped a little.
A lot of filmmakers that we've interviewed on Ramaskrik has also made music videos. And you've made a music video for The Prodigy. What do you think is the most important experience of making music videos?
Music videos, I've made a number of them over the last 10 years, and I've always tried to use making music videos as a way to tell stories and experiment narrative storytelling in a short format, and also techniques, trying out visual techniques to help kind of prepare for the feature. And also very much, they tend to be very short shoots, so you have to try and get a hell of a lot done in a short space of time, normally for not too much money. And I really enjoyed making music videos and still do. And I've used them to sort of try out as much as possible.
So the cordyceps, the fungal mushroom infestation that takes over your brain. Any direct inspirations?
Yeah, I mean, it's real, it's if you Google YouTube cordyceps, you'll see a David Attenborough program. When I saw that, it was something I'd seen, and I was, I'm always fascinated because really the things in real nature are far more strange and amazing than what you can dream up in a way. And once I found something that was a fungus that is immobile, that's able to infect the brain of an ant and use it as a vessel to populate itself, I thought, this is a great idea. This was before I saw The Last of Us, by the way, in case anyone's played the brilliant game The Last of Us, which is almost like a sequel to my film, I think. But I was looking at mythological ideas and ideas in science and nature and wanting to blur the lines and create an idea that it could be the locals are right, and this is some mythological, supernatural creatures, but it could also be an idea of nature creating kind of almost like a revenge on us humans. And I like the idea of fairies who are renowned to be malicious and deceptive and do anything they can to wreak havoc to a human family's lives, and take the babies and replace them with changelings and try and find a way of weaving it together. And cordyceps felt like a really nice, also just looking at horror ideas and infection and biology of creatures, and just trying to create a film that kept slightly changing and evolving, so as hopefully you're kept a bit on your toes when you watch it.
What's your first impression of Ramaskrik? And are you going to see some films while you're here?
Oh yeah, I mean, first of all, I got here last night, came straight from Sitges, and it's been so sort of special already, just arriving here in the mountains with fresh air, and everyone seems just very warm people. And I've actually managed to see 3 films, just watched Deathgasm, and And I would love to stay for longer and watch loads of films, but I have to leave tomorrow, unfortunately. No, it's really fantastic. We went up the mountains, we saw some muskox, we stood up on the view of the little cabin, and I mean, it's just a beautiful place. I'd definitely come back. I'm going to try and make a movie in a year to get back here, for next year.
I was wondering if it was actually a complete coincidence that you ended up putting a Stark up against Roose Bolton in this film.
You know what? It was. I mean, it was. But then Joe Maul was someone I always wanted, Benjen Stark. And I wasn't even familiar with Game of Thrones at that point. He's just someone I've always watched. I always liked. I wanted to find the equivalent of like Dustin Hoffman in Straw Dogs or Sigourney Weaver in Alien or Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, some sort of great character actor who could be in a lead role and be fascinating. And Joe's always been amazing to me. But he's never rarely in a lead. So he was cast, and then actually Colm, the neighbour, was one of the last to be cast because all of the guys I was looking at just weren't. They would always overplay it, and you get that kind of hokey character who turns up. And I was aware that both the policeman and Colm are kind of characters who you have to be very careful with because they are the guy who comes and says, "Here's what's going on," roughly. But when Michael McElhatton did his audition, he absolutely floored it, and it was just like, he's the guy. So Roose Bolton just came into the film. And Boyana also, the actress, she did an audition. I'd looked at a lot of actresses, and I was nearly going to go with one, and then Boyana did this audition. I'd never met her, and she was acting the scene when... And she just made my sort of neck hair go up. I believed that she was a mother who was like getting really like disturbed by what she was seeing, but I believed she was seeing it, so that got her the job, sort of thing.
Could you tell us a little bit about your earlier career as a special effects monster maker?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really a career. From when I was about 12 years old, I used to, when I got into horror movies, pretty much around the time of seeing Evil Dead 2, and The Thing, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Alien, and all these great movies. And I just loved the prosthetics and makeup and animatronics, and used to read Fangoria and want to be a monster maker, and loved Rob Bottin and Rick Baker and Stan Winston and Tom Savini and Gore. So I kind of tried with my friends. We used to get together and make horror movies with as much gore and zombies and monsters as possible. And as I grew up, I kind of carried on trying to make my own films, and then eventually studied theatre design in London, where I used sculpture and clay and illustration. And then I made a stop-motion movie, and then music videos, and then the Hallow.
I got a question regarding the creatures and how you developed them, and especially the body language was very interesting. Also, as a side note, thank you for not making them in CGI. But can you tell a bit about the development
You're welcome.
of the creatures as characters?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Great question. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure anyone in here who is a fan of monsters and things, the great ones just have actual personality, you know. They have to be terrifying, obviously, but also, I mean, I kind of love them at the same time. And you know, King Kong was, when I first saw King Kong as a 5-year-old, it terrified me, but it was really, I was crying at the end. And so it's like, I want to make sure that these creatures, first of all, design-wise, I mean, I'm a big fan of practical effects. I wanted to be a monster maker, a prosthetic artist, animatronics. I studied Fangoria as a kid and drew everything. And so when I got the chance to make my first film, even though it's gone technology has moved on since I was 12, I was adamant to try and do it in camera, partly because of the low budget, because I think even if you do, you know, CG is incredible, but to do it really, really well, you know, and I wanted to have quite a lot of effects in this film, I was concerned that we would shoot nothing and then not be able to render it, and then we're screwed. So I thought it's better to plan everything, and I sort of designing the creatures for a couple of years in my sketchbooks and trying to figure out, you know, biologically and kind of concept-wise with the narrative, but also create something that could be executed in camera. So then it was a case of casting very specific creature performers from hundreds of auditions of movement, people who did yes, contortionists, thanks, and mountain climbers and people who could hold different poises. I did a series of like workshops with them, including voice, and wanted them to, again, like obviously the movie you need to not know what these things are, but when I did want to show them, I wanted them to feel like they were something that was real, and he was also becoming them, and so the sound was a way of also kind of communicating the transformation and stuff. So.
And lastly, what fascinates you about the horror genre, and what's your biggest inspirations?
Good question. I think as I've grown up to wonder about myself and why I love horror, there's a number of reasons. I think one is like watching a good horror movie together with an audience, particularly, is very kind of sort of unifying experience. Having everyone feel like getting scared, there's something that I think your body goes through, a kind of emotional release if it's a good horror film, you know, and it makes people scared and makes people excited. But then also for me, I particularly love like imaginative horror movies or over the top or you know, ones that are scary but not necessarily just like grim and torturous sort of thing. So and that comes from, I think, early love of King Kong, seeing King Kong when I was 5, and then seeing Ray Harryhausen's monster movies and loving, you know, like Medusa, for instance, is really kind of like a horror sequence in Clash of the Titans. And really what I've gradually realised through watching films like Alien and The Thing and The Fly is this, I love the idea of these things being out there and being kind of recreated in a movie that you can enjoy, you know, as high quality as possible, or as honestly as possible. So I want to make more horror movies. It's like a greater world. It's not limited to our boring world, you know.